Good afternoon, everyone. We'll resume the hearing of the applications made by Tenex Group Limited. And at this stage, we're hearing from submitters this afternoon. But before we hear from our first submitter, anything for us from the reporting team?
No.
No? And Mr. Gardner-Hopkins, anything for us from your side?
No, nothing to raise.
Okay, thank you. So the first submitter on our list is Julie Shepherd, Pirirākau Tribal Authority. So good afternoon and welcome. So to yourself and all the other submitters who will appear this afternoon, we're very interested to hear your thoughts and particularly any summary or outlining of the key issues of concern to you. But other than that, over to you.
Kia ora and thank you. My name is Julie Shepherd. I am a Senior Environmental Planner for Pirirākau Tribal Authority. I have a postgraduate diploma in environmental planning from Waikato University, and I'm also an accredited Ministry for Environment Māori Commissioner. Barry and Beth Daniels have been long-standing people in our community, and I understand that there has been multiple issues of non-compliance, but I understood that Mr. Daniels was seeking to acquire resource consent to bring about that compliance. I had originally assessed the application and provided an assessment of cultural effects, but then I became aware through Matua Neville Bidwa, who is one of our kaumātua, that another of our kaumātua, Uncle Billy Boy, was opposing the application. So while I made a supportive submission based on conditions, I had to withdraw that support because of our kaumātua's participation in the hearing, and I could not provide us a supporting submission where one of our kaumātua are in opposition. So I've come along today just to talk about a few things and give a bit of context. Can I turn this off because it feels like it's...
No, you need to keep that on because it's being live streamed. So you need to speak clearly into the microphone so that anyone watching over the internet can hear.
Thank you. So I will just talk briefly in regards to the participation that Pirirākau has had in this local environment in terms of resource management and planning. So just if you can see here on the map there, that this site I'm not going to use my laser, but this site here, this is an area known as Te Tawa, and for 20 years Pirirākau were an environment court with Haybridge Developments Limited. They did end up being forced into bankruptcy, and then there was a new landowner who came along and we negotiated and worked with council to acquire that land, which is now secure. It is protected and it is now a public reserve. And then this site here, this is what is known as Puke Whanake. It is the past site of Ranginui, the chief of Ngāti Ranginui. And our ancestor, our tupuna, our paramount chief, is known as Tūteranga. He was the oldest son of Ranginui. So this was Ranginui's past site. You can see the hatching there. Pirirākau registered this site as a wāhi tapu with Heritage New Zealand. And then when you look at the Tenex site, which is here, and then you can see the large green area, In 2019, a landowner was illegally importing fill to the lower area. You can see the red circles which identify significant waihi tapu in association with that PAR site. So we worked rapidly and quickly with Western Bay, who have now acquired the whole lower plateau, and some additional lots would be formed up on the upper plateau to provide for additional housing, and that's where the housing is, up on the top plateau, coming off Clark Road. So we were successful in that. And Pirirako are very active in working with council to protect our cultural heritage. We don't just seek to protect it, we seek to lock them up for ultimate protection. Just recently, an abatement notice was served on another property in this location. And so the Hakau stream flows through here. Uncle Tami Kuka explained the name Hakau as ha, the breath, and then kau is about the cleanliness of that. So it is a very significant waterway. And just recently, we observed the Hakau as it runs along here through the back of the Tenex Barry and Beth Daniels site. So I made some observations about 3 months ago that it was very low, turning green. The watercress was growing up in clumps above the air. And then we had some baseline monitoring and testing occur, utilising the Ngāti Rangi Nui Tuna project. So they came out and done some monitoring, some trapping, and they found that the illegal drains, which are down in this location, in those drains, there were 32 tuna. In the Hakau itself, which runs along behind Barry Daniels, there was 5. So we lodged a complaint with Regional Council. They came out and did some investigations, and they found an illegal diversion. They served an abatement notice, which no one made a fuss about. And we went down with the landowner in this area here, and some of the members of Te Puna Priority came and assisted as well. And we closed off that diversion. Now, 2 days later, we had the Tuna Project Wānanga in one of our local marae, and we went down and we set 4 henake. There was an immediate, overnight transformation of the Hakau. The flow was back, and we did capture and release multiple tuna, over 60 of them. And they had returned into the Hakau, and actually where we are being told that our longfin tuna are at risk, they actually are thriving in this environment. So our native taonga are one of our greatest cultural indicators of when there's stress and harm. For example, when we did the first baseline monitoring and we found only 5 in the Hakau, and then the immediate transformation, we found them immediately returned. And then, so future planning involves potential access on Armstrong Road, which comes down here. At the moment, it's a paper road and it stops around here. But there are ongoing discussions regarding access to this reserve area that is now secured. And then when you go up to State Highway 2, where the Hakau passes through, in all of these farm drains, it's no longer in its natural state, but there's actually a perch culvert there, so there is no fish passage. And then up further, we've got the Takitimu Northlink project, and in the early planning of that, Pirirako opposed the full embankment of that section and, promoted bridges to be constructed over. And in that location, there's a large deposit of historic rubbish and that has to be remediated. So I'm demonstrating and relaying all these things to you here to communicate that Pirirako are very active in protecting their rohe and protecting their taonga. When I first received the application for resource consent and recently provided an assessment of cultural effects, it was my opinion that it is important that Mr. Daniels and Mrs. Daniels acquire the resource consent to impose the appropriate conditions to bring about all the changes that many of the submitters are asking for. There are issues of non-compliance, but I do, it was my opinion that granting resource consent would assist to bring about those conditions of consent. Traffic is one of the major issues of many of the submitters, and we have had the conversation with Western Bay previously because there's actually 3 properties down here that are seeking resource consent. There's the Tinex site, there's the Te Puna industrial site, which is the AKA container company. And then across the road, we've got Grant Overton, who is seeking retrospective resource consent. And so the conversation was had, where is KiwiRail in this, and how can it be communicated to KiwiRail to have a drop-off and pick-up location in this vicinity to minimise the loading on the, public roading and heightened traffic movements. No one has been able to give that answer, and no one has actively sort of become involved about promoting that opportunity because, there's also submissions going in at the moment to smart growth relating to traffic movements and potentially public transport and the reconnection of what used to be a train stop there. Because we've got multiple trains moving through that area, but none of them are for public transport or for the assistance to move things to and from the port to this location. And I don't believe unless that happens that there'll ever be any satisfaction about the traffic movements. I do believe there are key solutions to assist this industrial business park, which was an Environment Court decision made in 2005. I just want to also comment on the structure plan itself. It is very poorly constructed. And I think there needs to be more rules pertaining to that structure plan, and Pirirako would seek an opportunity to be more involved. So I just wanted to come again and share with you the Pirirako lens of how active we are in protecting our wāhi tapu, our taonga, and these locations. And this site does have a permitted activity to establish a cafeteria, a nursery, but because of the planning around this, there kind of isn't any opportunity to get movement there. Now, we have had discussions with the Daniels about locating in one of their yards to assist us to restore the hākau, because we need to be there. There's so many things that are culturally significant in this basin, and everyone else seems to be making the decisions about it without Pirirako participation in some regards. I do want to add, though, that Western Bay are very actively supportive and have very strong relationships with Pirirako hapu. So I hope that that assists the submission-making process. And again, I'd also like to give recognition to Matua Neville Bidwell and Uncle Billy Boy Burrell, who are our Pirirako kaumātua. And again, as stated, I did withdraw support because our 2 kaumātua were involved in the proceedings.
All right, thank you very much for that. I'll see if we have any questions for you, James.
Can't wait. I'll make sure I'm talking to this properly. Te nāku, Ms. Shepherd. Thank you very much for in terms of representing both, I guess, the PACE, the PACE, and your submission. I guess I just got a few questions. In the first instance is just around the Poke Whanake pā. Is there a marae that it's associated with?
Well, we have 4 marae in Perirako, but Puke Whanake was actually part of our confiscation. And one of the commissioners at the time, H.T. Clark, obtained one of the first properties on our boundaries. Perirako are known as the unsurrendered rebels. We did not agree to the acquisition of any of our land, and they were recorded to be completely in the way of the surveying pegs, as many iwi hapu have been in the country during those times. I think I drifted away from your question and I'd like to hear it again, please.
I guess it was just yep, I recognise, acknowledge the 4 marae with the Perirako, and it was just around the association or the connection of the Puke Whanake pā with one of those, if not, you know.
So
yeah,
I would like to speak more about Puke Whanake. When Perirako, because Puke Whanake, you can see where it is positioned. It was perfectly positioned for freshwater through Te Hakau, access to the Moana through the Wairoa River, safe landings and those kind of arrangements. When Perirako registered Puke Whanake as the Wāhi Tapu, we did not go in there on our own. We went to Heritage New Zealand and we invited all of the hapu of Ngāti Ranginui. The Wāhi Tapu within the green area identified as future reserve, those have also been registered as Wāhi Tapu. And again, when I did the registration, a meeting was held with all the other hapu of Ranginui. We recognise that Ranginui and this pā site is the only pā site where all of the hapu of Ranginui whakapapatu. So we take our kaitiakitanga of this pā site very serious. When the Wāhi Tapu registration occurred there, we weren't able to achieve that over the summit, given that the landowner's mother's ashes were deposited there. But when you look at this, you might think, oh yes, that's a little pā site. Puke Whanake was that whole ridge line, by the way. And in the early 1800s, when Reverend Brown was at this location and travelling through the Wairere track, the ancient highway to the Waikato and to Tauranga Moana, he did record that there were over 2,000 people residing on that pā site. And actually the archaeology, there was also a clifftop church, and the archaeology over time has confirmed that these built environments of that time were in exactly the right locations. Puke Whanake is a pā site that has the ability to bring people together.
Thank you for that. That's good. I guess another question I have is because there's a reference to tohu, or the Perirako environmental performance indicators. And I was wondering if you could sort of, not necessarily particularly for this project here, but I guess just give us some examples or characteristics of those tohu, of those
Indicators?
Yeah, of those indicators, just so that there's, yeah, give a bit of an idea when you say, yeah, tohu, when you say, you know, those indicators, sort of we can resonate to understand what they might look like.
One of the closest examples to this property can't really see it on this map clearly, but around here, and then coming further down the river here, there is a Kawo colony, so that's a black shag. This colony is the only colony in the Bay of Plenty that has 4 species of that manu nesting in these Pōtakawa. Now, they were a cultural indicator historically known over time, where we would rely on the sound of these birds, the call of these birds to tell us when it was a good time to fish, when not to fish. And we rely on our native tonga to outline what those cultural indicators are to us, and the performance indicators are solely focused on our taonga species. And they tell us, like I talked about with the Tuna Project and the trapping and monitoring of that, they tell us what state of environment is at hand at that very time. We find them to be the best on the moment indicator available to us. And it's an instant recall of how the situation is.
Cool. Thank you for that. Another part I have, and it's, I guess it's built on the understanding that the applicant has two applications currently in progress. One is looking at the wider development. Another one is around the retrospect. And I guess it was just to get, and I understand that you have been participating in the background in addition to the current application we have here. And I guess it's around a kupu you used, or word that you've used in the cultural impact assessment report, the Pūnaha Wai, the water systems and all that. And we're mindful hearing that there is some water issues out this way. And I guess I would like to get a bit of an understanding from Pirirako yourself around the Pūnaha Wai, that whakaaro, that expression that sits there for Pirirako. And if you can help us with that, that'd be great.
Thank you. Watershed is a very broad and expansive area, and people seem to pick on a river or a stream. If you look at Te Hakau, it's been completely modified, and the natural nature of it has been removed. So it's really important that we look to the past to inform our future, and it's in every Pūnaha Wai. To restore them as closely to the past as we can. I mean, Te Hakau, we want to look at Te Mana o Te Hakau. We want to look at its true identity. It's calling out to us. It's been taken from us. We've got drains everywhere, cleaning the land, servicing people. And it's our taonga species, and it's actually tangata whenua who are most affected by it, because it is often said, the water is us and we are the water. And when we have all these transformations and everybody is making multiple decisions, affecting our water bodies, filling in the water bodies to form perfectly aligned drains, it really does. It impacts on the mana of the Wai and on the mana of Pirirako. So, well, we deal with abatement notices, we deal with complaints and issues. Actually, we have historic maps that show us very clearly where the original terrain was. The Hakau was once a river delta. Now it's a farm drain. And we actually are seeking assistance to uphold the restoration of these water bodies and to improve the ecology within them.
So just a continuance of that. So in terms of any activity that's including this project that we have in front of us now, the expectation of yourself and Pirirako is improvement in terms of back to Hakau and any waters that are in your catchment?
Yes, when I discussed the perch culvert, a perch culvert is where the culvert is here and the water body is here. There's no access, there's no fish passage here. They're actually completely illegal. So it does concern me when there's planning arrangements and discussions to be had that people are focusing on people when actually all we care about is the best condition of our environment and upholding for future generations. We don't look at future generations in 100 years' time. They're our kids. They're our mokopuna who are here right now. And if we are taking them out and sharing the environment with them and telling them all of the stories that we know of, you know, what kind of stories are we saying? Oh, here's Te Hakau. Look at it, it's flowing through a farm drain. And we can't just stop there and leave it there. We've got to take the steps to reach for those improvements and reinstate the mana back into the water bodies. So part of my interest in all of these 3 sites and their resource consents is to also have the discussion about how much of your land could you contribute to a wetland to reinstate the flow and the improvements, because not very far. I mean, the Hakau itself is kind of, it's enclosed. We've got a railway line, we've got all these farm drains, we've got a perch culvert. There's many multiple issues that need to be remediated to bring back its true potential. And I think it is actually something, if we shift our focus to the well-being of these water bodies, everyone, and what we can do to improve them and use them as our baseline, then we might be further ahead down the game. Now, I know that Barry Daniels, he is a long-standing community member. He has been known to our hapu for 30 years. He is completely approachable. They had quarrying of metal there. Look, Barry, our hapu is really not happy with us. We can see all the dust plumes. They're going into the drains. We've got tonga species in the drains as well, plant materials. We actually have a species called paupau, which is an underwater weaving variety that once woven and dried, it has a rubber texture. It's a very unique plant, but we're losing all the ability to share these tonga and, you know, keep the practices alive because they're kind of being removed from us. And I don't focus on all the narratives. I focus on what is there and how we will look after it and how we'll continue to look after it and promote it actively with our people.
And I just have one last question, and it's just around, and you spoke in your kōrero just before around protection, you know, and that the efforts is to protect. And I guess this is me trying to make the connection, so correct me if I'm wrong, that in granting resource consent with conditions, there's an element of ability to protect or tidy up things. And I guess if I can just take a step back from that, so was that a correct? Cool. Is 2 parts to it. The first part is around your confidence, and you spoke well of the Western Bay of Plenty Regional Council, but I guess your confidence in council around the monitoring and then enforcement of things. Are you able to share a little bit about that?
We're actually in discussion with councils at the moment around social Māori procurement. Because, you know, our kaitiaki called in for the most insane purposes and times. For example, when they're emptying out a drain and, you know, they pull all the juvenile tuna out, we're called there to muck it out and put them back in. You know, and that, I mean, can you imagine you're called in last minute, you go down there, they're, you know, really struggling above ground, and we've got to race around and try and save them all, and some of them die. So you can imagine tangata whenua all there on the banks crying. I mean, this happened only 2 weeks ago at another site. It really is an emotional time for tangata whenua when these happen. But in terms of monitoring, Pirirako are seeking their own space and place in these domains. We are already actually monitoring in this location with a River Watch device. You know, we have SMAC kits, and we can do everything that regional council can do in terms of monitoring, but only tangata whenua can bring the truth to it to add all those additional layers that no one else can possibly understand.
Thank you, that's a good kōrero. I have no further questions unless...
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, but I just got one question for you. In the PACE report that you authored, I think, in section 7, you proposed some consent conditions. So my question is, with the change, the tribal authorities change in stance from one of support to one of neutrality, does the authority still seek those conditions?
If resource consent is granted by the decision maker, we would seek to have those conditions in place.
Yep. All right, thank you very much. That's the only matter I wanted to clarify with you, but thank you for coming in and presenting to us and answering our questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you too for giving me the opportunity to honour my kaumatua.
Yep, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Now, the next submitter on our list is Frank Aldridge. Nope. The next submitter after that is Beverly Kane.
Sorry, I need my glasses.
Yeah. Right, good afternoon and welcome. I see you've tabled some material for our benefit, so we're happy for you just to lead us through that and outline your key points for us. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I've actually I've owned my land in Te Puna just on 50 years, but I haven't been there full time. I actually worked in Auckland and commuted. My husband's family own a huge portion of all of Cane Park and the Penrose industrial area, which gets back to why I wanted to speak when we had the submissions being heard here at Western Bay District Council sometime either end of 2002 or 2003. I was shit scared, to be quite honest about it, having come from that environment and knowing what Penrose Industrial Park looked like. It wasn't a pretty picture. And we had come here to live in Te Puna, which is an absolute piece of paradise, and have a holistic way of living. When you live in Te Puna, you have a little bit of local knowledge. And what concerned me was that the developers, in my considered opinion, were a friendly bunch of cowboys. And when you do a development today, it is vastly different from what took place at the end of the war, when it was all about just buildings and creating employment, getting the economy back, getting a country out of depression. Today, we're looking for something totally different, where we're putting huge emphasis on the environment, on a holistic way of living, and being able to create a business park, which I'm not anti in any way whatsoever, but so you don't know where the business park basically ends or flows. And to do that, you've got to put a huge amount of emphasis into due diligence. And to do that due diligence, you've got to take into account not just immediate neighbours, but people who live in that particular part of Te Puna. And I believe more importantly, and it is still my main focus, is to a hospice, which is also located in the same road. The hospice was here first before the business park. And they go hand in hand. And it needs a huge amount of venture capital to create a business park. And to do a venture park, to do an industrial park of this magnitude, we're talking about 32.2 hectares. You're never going to be able to borrow that amount of money from a bank. And if you want to know, how do I know that? Well, I've owned a finance company lending for commercial development for probably well over 40 years, and venture capital is very expensive. You have to be a good operator, and huge number of developers sadly go under. They have these dreams and aspirations, which I don't knock, but you need to be an expert at what you're doing. And I feel the same. We have to take in consideration what it costs to build a hospice. I mean, today we are 20 million if we look at the replacement of the Cranford Hospice, which is on donated land. And we cannot afford to devalue anything in this road, whether it be further back where the hospice is or back where people are now living on the edge of the Wairoa estuary. And I was one of those that was very, very concerned. When the actual day when I spoke in 2002, 2003, I'd shut my office in Auckland, I came down and there were whispers that on the list of people who were supporting this business park, that there were a lot of signatures belonging to school children. I didn't actually know many people in Te Puna because I lived in Auckland and was only home for the weekends. But I duly quickly jumped in my car, went and drove around the Maori community and introduced myself and asked, what do you know about this business park? Who are these signatures? And I learnt that a lot of the signatures were from very young school children. And I identified those. And I actually came back into the council chamber and I requested that all the signatures supporting this business park that belong to young children be removed. I didn't feel it was appropriate. You need to be fully informed because we've come here for a holistic way of living and we want this done very, very well. In 2019, Mrs. Alison Carley very kindly introduced herself to our community, to Te Puna Heartland meeting. She, like me, was starting to get quite perturbed about the look of this business park. And she started to ask us questions at Te Puna Heartlands. Did we know if there was a commencement date? A date when the business park had to be completed. She talked about issues. And at that particular meeting, Mr. Daniels was present along with his son, and he was asked in front of Piri Rākau what type of activities he would have within his portion of the business park. His reply to all of us present was, I would do what I like. It was minuted. And I was pretty upset. We had Councillor Thwaites, who was actually helping Rowena Pearce chair that meeting. And to me, that was an indication and confirming my personal thoughts that I'm even more concerned that no consideration has been taken into comments that were made by Judge Smith, who I believed genuinely tried to have a very balanced business park where all our amenity values would be taken into consideration, where activities would have to sort of blend, that have to be compatible, and most definitely throughout different documents in the Environment Court ruling and structure plan, he talks about it has to enhance our rural community. So to enhance it, it's got to be an asset, not a liability. So then I see the bund, we're about 2019, I see the bund getting built, and then before long, the top is collapsing. And then I see the planting going on, and I'm starting to scratch my head and think, gosh, there's no mass planting. And I'm looking at some of the types of plants that are used. And I have to admit, I am on now just a 5-acre block, which is basically like a mini botanical park. So landscaping, I'm not a landscape planner, but the overall visual effect of landscaping is very important to me. It's part of my holistic way of life. So I look at the bund and I don't altogether agree that some of the native plantings are appropriate for a bund, because some of them look lovely when they're young, but it doesn't take more than 10 years and you get a lot of sparseness at the bottom. It's just the way they grow. Some are also wanting to lean towards the light. There are an area where there's dead plants that haven't been replaced, but no weed matting was ever put down. So at times I've seen the kikuyu grass taller than the top of the native shrubs. There isn't a lot of regular maintenance done as far as the weeding is concerned, and I know that's minor, but it's visual. And Judge Smith pointed out that the amenity values isn't just to the neighbours, it's also to everybody who uses the road. No consideration was given to mowing of the berm, so we have cattle put in there from time to time with an electric fence. So the cattle kindly, when they feel like it, turn their bums to the drain and they poo in the drain, and they're gradually breaking down the sides of the edge of the drain. That drain flows into the Hakau stream, which flows out into the Wairau estuary, where whitebait should be breeding, and we have people swimming and enjoying the estuary. And I find as a responsible developer, a lot of those things are an absolute no-no to me personally. That there was also supposed to be a swale built. That was a part of a condition of the structure plan. And I don't even know that the bund is in the correct place. And there is a lot of interpretation open about whether the bund is in the right place or it isn't. And again, that's minor. But I'm very concerned about the planting along Te Puna Station Road because that all has to be vested in our council. Anything to be vested in our council, I believe, should be of a very high standard. So it is something that we're very proud of. Not only just looks aesthetically nice, but it's very proud of. In the property file is the Garden HQ landscape mitigation plan. And so I was interested to read that. And one of the first things I notice is on that there's no contact address to speak to the person who wrote it. There's no email address, there's no office location number, there's no phone number, there's no signature, there's no date. And I thought to myself, this is a cut and paste. But this is the landscape mitigation plan for the bund, which is supposed to be vested in council, and you know, that is for the benefit of all of us. So I actually, with Neville Bidwar, we located where the owner of HQ Gardens lived and went and visited his property from the roadside only. It was absolutely beautiful. He's got probably 20 hectares of native planting, and it is of national significance. You just sit there and cry. It's so beautiful. It is mass planted, there's no weeding, there's pond. So I plucked up the courage after talking to Neville and obtained a phone number, and I asked the gentleman about this correspondence in the property farm, and he assured me that he did not write that. He actually thought he had the contract for the planting and was a little bit disappointed that he felt he didn't have the contract. He was led to believe the contract was his. So I won't say any more about that, but that sort of just as a little bit to describe what concerns me about doing a development that I expect very high moral standards of a developer doing a development park. The judge, I believe in my heart, and I stand to be corrected, that he's gone to extraordinary lengths to make sure that everything's going to blend and it's going to be in harmony, and more importantly, is an asset for our district. And that is the key focus of this thing be successful. I cannot for the life of me see how this business park is ever going to get off the ground, because right at the beginning you have three owners. How do you get three owners to agree, raise the money, work together?
Mrs. Kane, I'm sorry to interject. I've just been listening to you carefully. Maybe I should have explained at the start of your presentation what the scope of our role is. So our role as hearing commissioners is not to second guess the industrial park or its establishment or any previous environment court.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Our role as commissioners is not to second guess the establishment of the industrial park or to revisit anything that the Environment Court might have considered in the past. Our role for this hearing is quite limited, so our role is to consider whether or not retrospective consent should be granted to Mr. Daniel to undertake the 4 industrial activities that are currently on the site, the 4 tenancies, and that's the start and finish of our role. So what we're particularly interested to hear from you and all the other submitters is what if any, are the environmental effects of the existing 4 industrial activities on the site that are of concern to you. That's our primary interest in hearing from submitters this afternoon. So if,
I couldn't give consent to anything because I think it's an environmental disaster.
no, my question was, what adverse effects arising from the activities, in your view, are of concern to
Oh,
you?
I'm sorry, look, I prefer not to speak. I'm sorry. I've had this since 2001. I've had a gutful of it all and what it's done to me personally. So I'll just terminate. Thank you. I've had enough of it right up to here. I'm looking at an ugly monstrosity. And I never envisaged that I would come to live here and have this on my doorstep. Thank you.
So Ms. Kane, what you just said there, you were concerned about the visual effects of the activities. That's the sort of information we're interested in hearing from you about. All right, well, that's your prerogative, so thank you. Right, the next submitter on our list is Taifai Schuster. The next submitter on our list is Alison Cowley.
What do I do? You can. Just gonna make sure that that's working. Can I just down button? Yes, I'm just gonna make sure that's on. Yes, so you can use the. Oh, okay. Yep. Yep. Okay. Thanks for that. I might put that on full screens for you as well. Is that going up there? Yeah, it will go up. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much. Good afternoon,
Yes,
Commissioner.
good afternoon, welcome. And just to repeat what I said to the previous submitter, our role is quite limited. There are 2 other consent applications the applicant has made, one relating to unauthorised earthworks and one relating to the wider development of the business park. Our role is quite narrow in terms of whether or not retrospective consent should be granted to undertake the 4 industrial activities that are currently on the site.
Thank you very much. I understand that.
Great, thank you.
And my focus is on those activities continuing. Please bear with me a little bit. First of all, we have been asked to state our position on the council as regards the council officers report. I 100% support the overall submission and recommendation by Western Bay to decline this resource consent. I am speaking from a personal perspective, but to be honest, I'm actually here for a lot of other people in our community, people that I've gotten to know through the impact of the site, this particular site, over the last 5 years. My cognizance was raised when we needed to sell our property 5 years ago for job-related reasons. We were unable to sell our property and interested buyers cited the uncertainty and ad hoc development on this particular site as being too big a risk to take. Yes, it was a scruffy site, but we knew that there was a proper plan in place. I started looking into what was actually going on the site, and we've been dealing with it ever since. The list of people who have come to know and who are affected is way too long to name them all, but there are hundreds. I'm here now for the elderly Colin Hyde, who overlooks the site from his weatherboard house. I'm here for Sarah and for Diana, for Sam, Macarena and little Emilio that live directly behind the site to the south. I'm here for Tony and Jan, who breathed airborne silica dust for months. I've come to know many of Mana Whenua locally and have heard their concerns. Sarah Rice is speaking for Priority Te Puna, and she's covering aspects from impacts from the current activities, including traffic, roading, safety impacts, and these are impacts that are felt by the wider community. Sarah's also covering environmental concerns, including tenants' past record from a from a future certainty perspective, and the absence until now of water quality testing, I endorse and enforce what Sarah will say tomorrow. I support the community's concern that the strict and detailed conditions of the 2005 zone change have not been well protected in the district plan process. Every single issue on this particular site was clearly identified 18 years ago in the zoning change process 2005. Notwithstanding the processes in 2009 to 2012, which moved this from a rural subzone to industrial, I believe that the Environment Court decision and the grievance statement of facts are pivotal to this particular site. Mr. Daniel was intimately involved in that process, in which he and the other developers made very specific commitments to get their zone change over the line. While we're here at the beginning, I want to say that I actively advocate and support the preservation and respect of cultural value across Puke Whanake Pā site and the supporting area. It's a site that has suffered significant degradation in the past, and that was degradation that won't be tolerated today. In this chapter, I'm focusing on stormwater issues and related geotech concerns that support my submission. These impact and add complexity to the whole site, including the roading, and that includes the measures that have to be taken for this resource consent. There's nothing about the impacts of these activities that is minor or less than minor. I've lived in Te Puna for 8 years. Living in a rural area had long been a hard-earned goal of ours. Instead, living on our particular block has turned into an absolute nightmare as the influence of non-compliant development of this particular site. Our lives in our house are typified by chronic long-term stress caused by the following. Our property is directly physically affected by the earthworks he has done and the failure for the prerequisites to be in place. The uncertainty and total unpredictability has been the worst, caused by ad hoc development. Hundreds of hours, associated lost work time, lost family time and focus have been used instead to advocate that the rules that this applicant signed up to are upheld. We understood that this was a rural business park. We did our due diligence. The district plan has a site map, and we had no reason to believe that this site would ever be used for anything other than the professionally developed full infrastructure site that blended with a local rural environment. We understood that actually this would be a positive contribution to our neighbourhood in an environmentally conscious way. Mr. Daniel's application is for his property and for these 4 activities, but the infrastructure requirements, and this speaks to the 2-year nature of the consent sought, are by their nature integrated and codependent for the whole zone. Stormwater flows literally, obviously, from one property to the next towards the river and harbour. Roading capacity and safety for each operator are cumulative. Therefore, solutions for stormwater and roading, as identified in 2005, absolutely and from a totally practical perspective, have to be planned, presented and approved for the whole zone prior to any commercial activity on the site. Upholding a professional, consenting and logically staged development from site analysis with geotech and integrated stormwater, then roading and provision of services prior to the commercial activity is a normal way that we all see sites develop. We're all familiar with sites like Tauriko and the nearby Teihana residential development. What we have now is so far from the intent of the 2005 zone that it's unrecognisable. I have in my evidence some points from that Environment Court decision. I'll just read a little bit out of point 116 from the Environment Court decision, which says we now come to the question of the general provisions of the Act and meeting the purpose of the Act. We have concluded that the zone now envisaged is something different to either a rural or industrial zone. In our view, it would be better to fit as a subzone of the rural zone than as an industrial zone in its own right. This is on the basis that although activities within it have a more industrial flavour, the zone nevertheless is defined by its effects. It is intended that this area fit within and remain compatible with the rural area. On stormwater, in my submission I've already included some photos. This photo here behind me shows perpetual inundation building up specifically or from about January 2022 to being constantly inundated from about June, July 2022. And this is in normal weather conditions. When we had extreme events, obviously it got a lot worse. So you can see on this map, Mr. Daniels' platform, which you visited this morning, I believe. Top right-hand side, Mr. Daniels' platform. And we can see the absence of the overland flow path. That should be going, I can't point, down towards his house there. I don't know how to use that. Oh, that would be great. Yep. Use this button. Thank you. Which one? That one. This one. Thanks. Yeah, so the overland flow path should be going down through here, sweeping around to the eastern side of his property and out to meet the roadside drains. This property here is Paul Winwood's. This is 297 Te Puna Station Road. As you can see, the inundation is quite significant. All of this water needs to go out here through and along the roadside drain to the culvert under the corner at the eastern end of that section of Te Puna Station Road, or down the Hakau stream, which is coming along the back of Mr. Daniels over here. The stream itself now is full of silt, exacerbated by the long-term flooding, stripping topsoil and laying it down into the stream bed to a depth of about 1.5 metres. As Julie talked about the stream being diverted, my neighbour put an emergency connection between a couple of drains just to get the water to move down. It was stagnant and disgusting on the paddocks for many, many months. Now that abatement notice has been satisfied with a raised culvert to just allow excess water to go somewhere other than the stream. We'll talk a little bit shortly about the what I believe to be the fill directly behind the activities on the site falling into the stream. Stormwater infrastructure should have been developed way back when the very first lot of fill was put in, way before 2012, when Mr. Daniels surrendered his consent with Regional Council, right back in 2005, immediately after the zone change, because he had already been filling for some time. Just to revisit that, it was identified, sorry, I lost my place. Yeah, so obviously you've seen the site plan, the Hakau, you can see there in the blue line down there. Overland flow path is to be 3 hectares through this area here, including wetlands, which would allow for obviously improvement of the amenity value, but most importantly for environmental improvement and interlock planting, obviously. I want to refer to my evidence which is quotes from Mr. Daniels' own consultant regarding unlawful fill and remedial works. Mr. Stephen Boss, the engineer for the applicant, whose quotes for the abatement hearing in July says, further modelling works are currently underway to identify potential remedial works that will result in upstream water levels being lowered. Watching multiple properties being absolutely devastated over many months, undoing years of environmental improvement and hard work is incredibly stressful. I strongly disagree with Mr. Boss's thoughts that this is all irrelevant to the particular consent application. Failure to do correct works prior to commercial activity has caused these problems. The platform itself acts as an enormous dam. Mr. Daniel is making significant income from his non-compliant tenants, whilst multiple properties have been and are still severely damaged with no plan for action. He has absolutely failed to improve stormwater or the environment in any way, by failing to develop the wetlands and overland flow path. The degradation of the valley at so many levels is a polar opposite of what was offered up as an asset to the community in 2005. Again, just another aerial shot showing the lack of stormwater infrastructure and highlighting that all this water has to get through this little culvert that goes under here, both around 177 Te Puna Station Road, down here, and we'll talk about setbacks in a minute as well from these particular activities on site. And again, that's just an image of the consented fill versus the unconsented fill, with unconsented fill through this area. And whilst, yeah. So the setback rule from the Environment Court ruling, which is 0.85 in the Environment Court ruling, 7.3.4, so on. Where a yard is adjacent to Te Puna Station Road, that yard shall be a minimum of 20 metres from the road boundary of the site or from any waterway or pond. Prerequisite setbacks from waterways and maintenance plans were clearly described in that ruling and accepted by the developer. Failure to adhere to these, I believe, has contributed to environmental degradations and certainly a lack of enhancement. Mr. Daniel has cribbed every available square meterage of leasable site at the expense of the environment, I believe. I believe the lot fences need to be pulled out, the fill banks battered back for stability and proper riparian planting, margin stability and maintenance access. I want to talk about the geotech and hydrological issues which haven't been addressed. Te Puna translates as the springs. Te Hakao Valley is characterised everywhere by subsurface waterways and springs. Therefore, groundwater and the interruption of that by compacted fill has to be considered. In its very original state, the catchment discharged across the wide delta, as mentioned by Julie, across Tahataharoa salt marsh and found its way into the harbour both overland and through the soft alluvial silt beneath the surface. There are literally underground waterways. I know that because springs pop up in the middle of paddocks. Early on, construction of the road and the railway embankment has compressed earth layers somewhat in an east to west corridor, leaving the main point of obvious discharge as that culvert in the eastern side of the business park under Te Puna Station Road. The Māori, the groundwater and stormwater was first interrupted at that time, forcing the water towards that only exit. Now this monolith of a platform with a lack of infrastructure is like a cork in the bottle. I refer to the Opus report Appendix F, as the Opus report was commissioned by the three developers in 2002. It was clearly identified. Let's see if it's there. She hasn't got it there. You don't have that report? Oh, is it back? Do I just go back? Where is it? Just the pictures. I can just speak to it because I'm sure the commissioners will have received it already. Oh, I'll just, yeah, fine, yeah. Hopefully you've received that Appendix F.
Yeah, so if you just speak
I'll
to
just
it and
speak to
highlight
it,
your
that's
key
enough.
concerns, we
Yeah.
can look at it in
Thank you
further
very much.
detail later.
It was clearly identified in that 2002 Opus report that the geotechnical conditions of this former salt marsh would require specifically engineered development. There are a number of charts that you would have seen there, and for those other submitters, for their interest as well. The charts demonstrate the soil strength, the water table, and speak to the alluvial silt and very soft saturated nature of the subsoil down to a depth of about 12 metres on those ones. The geotech that TPIL has submitted goes down to a depth of about 20 metres. The Opus geotech reports those the very low-lying nature of the site with groundwater at or just below. The fill already deposited to a depth of around 2 metres contained appreciable amounts of concrete, leading to variable compactability. This was noted in the Environment Court ruling as unsupervised earth and rubble fill. That these very soft saturated silts and bluish grey clay lenses with negligible material strengths go to about 12 metres depth, and that there would be specific engineering requirements for road access and formation due to the geotech conditions. And I would assume that that will relate also to the proposed entranceway upgrades. The report summarises that detailed geotechnical design and construction works must be carried out for each stage of the development. I ask, how much geotech analysis has been done in the creation of this platform? I note that no external monitoring of fill was carried out. Mr. Daniel detailed that he alone was witness to that fill. I note that any required road widening would involve considerable geotech engineering based on these local conditions. That legally required drain relocation is implicated in road widening and entranceway. These issues should have been dealt with prior to commercial operation, and they are many and complex. I note that there is no measurement of the impact of this site on groundwater flow. The current activities sit on a platform constructed by unmonitored material in an ad hoc manner over deep, soft estuarine silts. Only a thorough geotechnical environmental investigation by a qualified hydrogeomorphologist could establish the integrity of the platform and the effects the fill have had on groundwater behaviour. I also note that the portion of Te Puna Station Road adjacent to the river, which may open and may be used eventually by this traffic, also sits on a similar floodplain and saturated compressible silts. If that road should reopen, I question sustainable use by heavy commercial vehicles from the Tenex site and endorse vibration concern expressed by many mana whenua as regards protection of the Pukewhanaki Pa site from further slips. Oh, she's lost my photos. You lost my photos. Sorry. How do you get the photos? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. Certainly don't want to look at myself. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry to make you get that one down. Okay. Is it changing? Can I just click on it like this?
Yes, you can. You want to move through that? Or
Yeah, I just want to get down to it.
Okay.
So can I just click on there? Yep. It's not up. You get it up there. Oh, there we go. Cool. Yeah, so this is a view. Oh, it's not up yet, sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much. There we go. So this is looking at the Harkell stream. This is taken from the Wynwood property at the most southern corner of Mr. Daniel's site, looking up the stream and towards his site. As you can see, there's collapse of stream bank there. The silt is, as we said, about 1.5 metres deep in that stream bed, which has perpetuated the problems. I believe that compromise of the flow through this piece of stream and the lack of alternative path has led to those flooding issues, which have in turn led to more silt build-up. I think that if the setback and where the commercial activities are now was remedied, then care for this waterway would be a great deal better. There's another picture which my friends will show you tomorrow, which is the drain side banks on Te Puna Station Road collapsing also, which is the only other way at the moment for the water to get out of the valley. I believe the current activities established without adherence should be removed as investigations and any potential remediations are undertaken. Where this valley once provided a valuable service as a floodplain to receive water from the surrounding 600 hectare catchment, filter and slow release to the harbour, is now choked due to lack of compensatory stormwater provision. In 26th of September this year, I looked at the volume of water that goes down this catchment. Just in that 48-hour period, there was 74.5 millimetres, and that's measured at the Odie Road monitoring station up in the hills behind Te Puna. Just in that period alone, 447,000 cubic metres of water has to get down this catchment. Annually, over the 600 hectare catchment, the rainfall was 2.6 metres, being 15,702,000 cubic metres that needs to go past this platform and out under that culvert under Te Puna Station Road. And hopefully my other photos will work. I'm not quite sure how to get them. How do you get to the next pictures? I'm so sorry to, you could just sit here. How do you get there? That was the last one on that slide. Just plug my laptop in. Oh.
So these were your.
Yeah, we've had those. Yeah. That'll do.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll do. Thanks.
Were them all open?
Yep. Only going to be 2 minutes if you want to stay there. Now what do we do?
Share. Yeah. Choose. Have it on screen.
How do I get out of them? Press escape.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You want me to bring one up?
Yeah.
Anyone?
Yeah, anyone's fine. So again, I'm just going to show just a few pictures. This is taken from my property looking down the valley. This was anniversary weekend. It wasn't a large weather event, but this weather event came on top of water already being up to the level of your gumboots on the pasture up the valley. Thank you. Te Puna Station Road, obviously severe inundation, and we do question the sustainability of use of this road. This is, again, anniversary weekend. We note also that this road is anecdotally constructed on old kauri logs across the salt marsh. It's narrow, it gets flooded. Yeah, whether it's a satisfactory situation is up to you. Again, inundation, this was stagnant and very detrimental to the environment, I believe, really stank, and this is in normal weather conditions for over a year. Again, you can see very clearly that that great big plug of dam, basically stopping the water getting out in the middle of the, needs to get out over there, and it just can't. And this is tree damage, which quite frankly is soul destroying. We put these screens up, these trees up to help stabilise the earth, obviously, act as nursery plants for natives that we want to plant as underneath riparian planting. You can see the bark damage there. That's how high the water sat for months and months and months, and we lost many of the trees as they fell over. You can see we've propped up some of them behind. Most of those ones haven't survived. the water level is only lower now because of the actions of the neighbour who connected a couple of farm drains in emergency circumstances. Yeah, absolutely soul destroying, but more than that, it's environmental. So I believe, in summary, thank you, that the park was clearly stipulated to be developed as an integrated business park, notwithstanding the 3 separate owners. There were and are clear prerequisites for infrastructure in the district plan, and as committed to in that initial zone change. Complete failure to proactively adhere to these obligations has had huge detrimental effects on the community that Environment Court ruling sought to protect. The ongoing drawn-out nature of the process is having massive economic costs on neighbours, not only in property damage, but in impact to work hours, career and life. As prior, Sarah will cover traffic danger and environmental degradation. Neville will speak to cultural degradation. Additionally, this incremental ad hoc approach to development is having a massive toll on ratepayers across the Western Bay and the financial resource, from investigating complaints and compliance to massive costs for consultants and legal fees in this never-ending process. Upholding of the regulatory process, insistence on robust, proactive environmental protection and enhancement, with a culture of developments being held to high standards, I uphold as necessary to avoid endless drawn-out processes and this environmental degradation. I do not think Mr. Daniel can fulfil all of his remedial works and obligations within the 2-year consent period requested. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for that. Just before I see if we have questions for you, can we have a copy of your speaking notes?
Of course.
That'd be great. And if you could just email them to our hearing administrator, then she can email them to us if that's
No
all right with
problem
you.
at all.
Thank you. James, questions?
I guess very thorough submission and representation of it. And so I do look forward to getting, I was going to ask that question, to a copy of what you read to us. Just for clarity, and this is the only question I have, there were a number of counties that provided submissions. There was a Mark, a Lucas, a Max, Samantha.
Yeah, so my adult children,
Yeah.
they have finished high school and they've gone off to their studies. They pretty much don't come home.
So I guess I was just like making sure that there was the connection to
Yep.
the
Yeah,
and
they have been severely impacted by the stress on our family.
okay. No, thank you. I was just making sure there was a connection there. Thank you.
You briefly mentioned road safety issues, and you did say that tomorrow's speaker, Sarah Rice, is going to address that. But I'm interested in your perspective. Do you use the Te Puna Road, Te Puna Station Road intersection?
I don't use it a lot now because I live south on Te Puna Road.
Right.
But I used to take my kids to school every single day using that road. And I have witnessed many issues of large vehicles not staying in lanes, vehicles having to hold back to allow very large vehicles to navigate that corner. The camber, the slope and the sight lines coming out of Te Puna Station Road onto Te Puna Road are difficult. And I've been emailed so many videos from members of the community where they're just horrified at just the scale of the vehicles and their inability to cope on the roads as they are, including Te Puna Station Road. Actually, it's very narrow. Anybody that's ever ridden a bike along there knows that you don't want to pass any traffic as you go. There's no room for error, deep stagnant drains on both sides. And 2 trucks passing each other is difficult.
So you've had personal experience of safety issues at the Te Puna Road, Te Puna Station Road intersection, and you've had reports from others of issues. In terms of those issues, was that when you were travelling north or south along?
It was when I was travelling, I'd travel both ways.
Right.
Yeah.
And so have you encountered heavy vehicles that are parked on Te Puna Road waiting to turn right into Te Puna Station Road?
100%.
Yeah.
Yep, often.
And was that one of the safety issues that was of concern?
Yes,
to you?
because as you brake behind them to stop because they're in the lane,
Yeah.
you're very aware that cars coming behind you have quite short sight lines as they come over the brow of that
Yes.
little hill there.
Yep.
And yeah, that's a serious consideration. You're looking frontwards, obviously, to see what's going on, but you're also looking your rear view mirror and pumping your brakes to make anybody see them because you're stopped in a not great place.
Okay, great. Well, okay, thank you. That's very helpful. But no further questions, but we do look forward to getting your speaking notes, which were very detailed and helpful. So
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
I just want to check, I haven't been keeping my eye on the door. Submitters who are scheduled this afternoon who I called out before, Frank Aldridge. You're a Frank Aldridge here? Nope.
Sorry, Chair, we've had an apology from Frank, so he won't be coming today.
Okay, and what about Typho Schuster? Submitter number 149.
Not here as yet, but expected for 2:20, I believe.
Yeah, okay. So now, are there any submitters who were scheduled to appear after afternoon tea who are presently here who wish to speak now? Or sorry, can you hear? Yeah, so are there any submitters who on our schedule were going to appear after afternoon tea who are here in person who would be prepared to speak now or would like to speak now? Okay, come on up.
Kia ora ranga tira. Tēnā korua. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Ko takatimu te waka, ko mau te maanga, ko taranga te moana, ko Ngāti Rangiru te iwi, ko Ngāti Rangi ko Rangi te hapu, ko Neville Bidwā tuku ingoa. I resided back in Te Puna and been a ratepayer since the year 2000. I've been involved in projects within the hapu, marae and community since arriving back. Presently, I am a member of the Pirirako Tribal Authority Kauai-Rurunga and chair of the Pirirako Tribal Authority Formal Complaints Committee. I'm also a founding member of the Party Te Puna Incorporated Society. A fair and accurate account of where I come from and who I am was written about me approximately 6 years ago in relation to a nationwide competition. You can find that by Googling Nev Bidwā Love Racing. I'm the great-great-grandson of Frenchman Louis Bidwā and prestigious Māori woman Eri Hapiti Whakamomori. Through her connection, I whakapapa back to one of the commanders of the Takatimu Waka, Tometia Paukai Whenua, and his second wife, Ihu Parapara. In relation to the Puke Whanake Pā, situated on Station Road, Te Puna, the surrounding area has been the Wairau River to the east, Tahataro, out from the north face, and the Hakio Valley bordering against the north face, heading west, now dissected by Station Road and the railway line, then heading south of the western end of the Pā up to the Minden area. History of this area has been passed down orally from tupuna and recorded with the arrival of the missionaries as having huge cultural and wahitapu significance to those that have whakapapa links to Puka Whanake Pā. From the arrival of the Takatimu Waka, this area has not escaped the perils of peaceful times and conflicts between peoples. Kororo passed down through the generations, say by conquest. Ranganui, the son of Tamati Paukai Whenua, overran the original people Ngā Marama and took over occupation of the Puke Whanake Pā and surrounding areas. The Ngā Marama fled to the Whakamaramara bush area and became known as the bush dwellers or Pirirako. Remnants stayed and blended with Ranganui's people. Ngāti Ranganui iwi descend from our tupuna, Ranganui. Around the 16th century, Pukewhanake Pā and surrounding areas were invaded and occupied by Ngaitarangi chief Tiwaru. Ngāti Rangi peoples existed as a vassal tribe of Ngaitarangi. Land confiscation by the Crown in the 1860s caused deep hurt and grievances between Māori and the Crown. During the Ngāti Ranginui Bush campaign in 1867, objecting to the terms of the confiscation, Pukewhanake Pā and surrounding areas were included but not surrendered to the Crown. Records show the people of Ranganui didn't surrender either and were subsequently tagged as being pirirako or rebels. To add insult to injury, Pukewhanake Pā and surrounding areas were taken as punishment. The question must be answered, when does this punishment end? Grievances ran deep on the distribution of confiscated whenua to those friendly to the Crown. That hurt still exists today, being alienated from their whenua over the ensuing years. Our tupuna and today's people have watched it being sold, worked, and now development starting to take place with total disregard to the Māori life force, wairua, spiritual, and wahitapu, sacred of this area. What has been allowed to happen down the Station Road now is certainly no cure for their hurt that still exists today. Around 1940, the Rawa Line and Station Road were built through the lower Hakeo Valley area, subsequently disturbing the natural environment with no regards to the cultural links to the people. In 1965, whenua taken from the eastern side and northern side of Pukewhanake Pā for the Wairoa River Bridge Road approaches unearthed koiwi and damaged the pā. Fourth generation resident, Mr. Peter Lockhead, whose family have worked the Te Ako Valley since 1886, confirmed to me recently how koiwi was left in bags on the side of the road before being taken over to the Ngāti Kahu side of the river to be buried. They are kaumātua queer who can still recall that event and suffer in silence. Peter's family over the years have records from the time they dug the first stream, now known as the Hakeo stream, from the upper valley to lower valley to drain the area to farm. And I may add records of locals who worked for their family over the years. My understanding is the seed of this business park development in Station Road was planted by Western Bay District Council and Bay of Plenty Regional Council, Barry Daniels and other parties in the early 2000s. When this business park hearing commenced in October 2004, submissions were put forward to the Environment Court on behalf of Pirirako Rohi by the late Peter Rolliston and representatives of other community organisations and individuals, all in good faith. Peter initially opposed the application, but with a slight variation to certain conditions, Peter reluctantly agreed for the development to proceed. For example, two conditions of many he agreed to was a planting of 3 hectares of wetland areas and water quality testing on a regular basis of the Hakeo stream and Wairoa River by the Western Bay District Council and Bay of Plenty Regional Council. It appears the moral and social agreement that Peter and others reluctantly agreed to on behalf of the hapu, based on Judge Smith's Environment Court rulings, have been chucked out the window. Where's the good faith in that? From those that planted the seed in the early 2000s, that seed has now sprouted into a monster that's spreading harm in the community and environment, and I guess doesn't fit in at all with Judge Smith's Environmental Court rulings. After 18 years, the promised 3 hectares of trees should be over 100 feet tall, and the question must be answered on the water quality. It is a total insult to Peter's mana for all the fine work he has done for the hapu and community up until his unfortunate passing. Mrs. Alison Cowley, Chair of Priority Te Puna, Incorporated Society and myself recently represented our organisation in Environment Court opposing resource consent 13924L submitted by Mr. and Mrs. Daniels Tennis Group for resource consent allowing him to continue along with his illegal activities and showing total disrespect to the Māori, Wairua and Wahitapu of this area. I can't be wrong, but the recent Environment Court hearing exposed his actions in consistently and blatantly not adhering to Judge Smith's Environment Court rulings. He's had 18 years to comply. One of many blatant examples that I'm not happy with was not submitting a professional landscaping plan into the Western Bay of Plenty District Council for approval before planting of the buns. He went ahead with this work in a devious manner. I have a document in my possession for landscape mitigation planting at 245 Station Road. The background of this document states Garden Headquarters was engaged by the Daniels to prepare a plan. Following the submission and acceptance of the plan, the site was cleared for planting. It also states Barry and Beth Daniels engaged local iwi, Pirirako, to assist with plant layout and installation. A pre-start induction was undertaken to ensure all planters were familiar with the site and fully versed in good planting methodology. My understanding on making inquiries was Mr. Daniels to supply plants, fee negotiated by person representing Pirirako to plant, and a local sports club to plant trees for a donation or koha. I spoke kanohi to kanohi with the chairperson at the time the club was involved, and that person confirmed to me that most was correct. He also confirmed no induction, planting or site familiarisation had taken place. He confirmed planting took place on a Saturday in early June 2020. From what he told me, it sounded like a Mickey Mouse performance. Approximately 12 to 15 crews, some never planted a tree in their life, frustration set in, striking concrete and other objects while digging below the surface of the buns. The job wasn't completed up to standard. The Pirirako person who made the arrangements got someone else in to tidy up the mess and complete the job, as the owner wasn't satisfied. This is just another example of Daniels cantering along, doing things in an ad hoc manner. Gives a one-finger salute to the community and the councils because he knows he can get away with it, and he disrespectfully tramples on Judge Smith's mana and Environment Court rulings. In relation to this document, I have in my possession contact has been made to the owner of Garden Headquarters, and he totally distances himself from this document. I have sought professional opinions on this document, and I have been assured with no phone number, no contact deals, only a company name. It's a cut and paste document, very unprofessional site plan and not signed. Most disturbing to me personally, this document is referring to Pirirako as a iwi. In tikanga terms, iwi are named after tupuna. If this letter writer can tell me who Pirirako's mother and father is, well and good. If they can't, it will confirm to me that the professional opinions are correct when they say this is a fraudulent document. The question must be answered. Was this a document forwarded to the Western Bay of Plenty District Council for approval of the planting of the buns? A paper trail I have clearly shows a professional landscaper was engaged after the planting was started. I guess maybe to fix the first botch up and to comply with Judge Smith's Environment Court rulings. Personally, I've spent most of my working life in the construction industry, working throughout Aotearoa and overseas. Qualifications I presently hold were gained from the New Zealand Labour Department, then name changed to OSH, Occupation Safety and Health, and now called WorkSafe. My construction safety supervisor and construction supervisor qualifications relate to the present type of activities being carried out on that site in one form or another. Driving past that site over the past few years, I've seen activities being carried out that would be immediately closed down through not complying with the Construction Act. Examples such as concrete crushing without screens, old houses being renovated that have asbestos-related material not covered or protection covered to stop the spreading of contaminated material, access road and yards not sealed to prevent contaminated dust being blown around, and no water sprinklers for dust control. Tyre storage, which is potentially a huge fire risk, all hazards that have the potential to cause huge damage to the environment, orchards, and have an effect on the health of the people. Those risks are only what I've observed from the roadside. Would be interesting to know what's in the so-called clean fill when you see what's running into the northern Hākio drain. Photo evidence I produced in the resource consent 13924L hearing, Environment Court hearing, showing a brown scum flowing through the drainage pipes under the northern bund into that stream is getting worse. I did mention in that hearing the riverbank where this was occurring was ready to collapse. Well, you guessed it, it collapsed a few days after the court hearing. I have up-to-date photos showing how it's getting worse. If the commissioners may want to compare apples with apples, also up-to-date photos of the Tomo and subsidence occurring each side of the culvert. Just recently, approximately 200 metres west of this catastrophe happening, a Tomo has opened up approximately 1 to 2 metres from the tar seal, same side of the road at a culvert crossing two businesses on the other side of the road. The Tomo is approximately 500 to 600 mil across, and only the Taniwha knows how deep it is. The edges around both sides of the culvert are starting to collapse. I have photos taken on the 26th of the 9th, 23, and it's getting worse. What damage is there under the station road you can't see? Some poor bugger will probably drive into a Tomo a few days after this hearing ends. I mentioned in the Environment Court hearing, you can't beat nature. Maybe these two events are a sign of things to come. Who knows, apart from our tupuna and Taniwha. As we all know, this is a low-lying wetland area, a natural floodplain prone to flooding from not only rain but spring high tides. And I may add, everyone is forgetting about the elephant in the room, climate change. What is the BOP, Bay of Plenty Regional Council predictions of modelling for sea level rises in this area or the Tauranga Moana? Was storms and flooding we had in late January are a sign of things to come. You only have to look around this broken world to see what adverse effects of climate change. The councils, by allowing Mr. Daniels to create this business monster, have stuffed up big time. Makes me wonder whether this Tomo that's appeared on the scene as a hole the council's dug itself into and can't find a way out. This business park has just been plonked over a natural water filtration flow, which is now being choked off by approximately 40,000 cubic metres of illegal fill. I believe he has applied for a consent from the council to leave it there. If it was a Māori dumping a wheelbarrow load down there, he'd go to jail. Daniel's showing his ignorance once again. Dump the fill there and worry about things later. It appears he's having a dream run by not being monitored by council or WorkSafe. You council engineers, get off your bums and have a look at what's happening at low tide. It was noticed by a few community members how the site was cleared up before the resource 13924L consent hearing started. I guess to pull the wool over the commissioner's eyes during their site visit. Build up of sediments and pollution coming off Daniels, Bax's and Overton's business sites are flowing down the northern Hākio stream right along the full length of Station Road from Bax's property, then into the Wairoa River and Tauranga Moana. This will have an adverse effect on the benthic communities and habitats. New Zealand Forest and Bird have a report showing the great giant kakapu, giant bully, longfin tuna, freshwater mussel at risk declining, and grey duck threatened in this area. The southern side of Daniels' business park, where the main Hakeo stream flows, is full of sediment which needs cleaning out to get a better flow, and the banks are collapsing. Admittedly, some of the sediment is coming from higher up the valley. The bunds aren't in the right place, and no swales to be seen for retention of water runoff from his site. Once again, Tamana's nose up at the council. The eastern end of the stream from Daniel's house exposes all the tickle scummy brown water. Looks like tickle runoff, probably from his house, and the business upstream on the other side of Station Road. I only hope Mr. Daniels doesn't try pulling the wool over everyone's eyes by producing a report on the health of the water, wider and habitats from the southern side of the Hakeo stream. If he doesn't produce a report on the northern side, the full length of Station Road, both sides, I challenge him to do so. I may add, at the western end at low tide, the drains both sides of Station Road are still full, not flowing properly, and that in turn is not allowing water to drain off surrounding areas and causing further problems up the Hakeo Valley. Common sense tells you it goes back to the Daniels' illegal dumping of the fill. A repeat of the Buns situation, do things illegally he knows he can get away with. It appears he has the councils wrapped around his little finger. One finger salute to the community and who cares attitude. The councils have a moral obligation and duty of care to its ratepayers to make him remove that illegal fill, using that Maori fella's wheelbarrow at his cost, not the ratepayers, and prosecute. With his ad hoc attitude and practices, he should be closed down. No more favours anymore. I'm a betting man. I would put money on both councils are having problems finding a solution for their stormwater infrastructure in such a low-lying area. Would it be capable of handling the water flows in this flood-prone area, especially with climate change upon us? Lots of issues to solve around this one. Me, Hapu members, the community, and our taniwha have no flash degrees. Well, some have, but they're told to shut up because they're called know-it-alls, like the people who had created this monster, but we got common sense and real life experiences. Some councillors are like politicians, promise everything, get into power and botch things up. Only one fella I know who had honest intentions of getting into Parliament, and if a person came along with his attitude to run for council, I'd run myself broke supporting him. I'm talking about a fella called Guy Fawkes. We can fix it tomorrow by taking it back to the Environment Court, or maybe Waitangi Tribunal, and get the whole shambles shut down. That will save the ratepayers and future generations millions, by not having to prop up these developers and not waste money trying to beat nature. With the roading network not up to standard for heavy vehicles and the increase in traffic, it's just creating a dangerous environment for motorists, cyclists and pedestrians, especially for children with the Tipuna Primary School so close. A survey was just held to consider options to open Station Road around the east side of Pukawhaneke Pa to relieve Clark Road traffic. I can assure the council you won't get hapu or priority Tipuna support. Enough damage to the pa and slips on the side of the road into the Wairau River is enough overhang and slips ready to go now with the vibration and heavy rain. Also a big danger for cyclists. Noticed just recently the Red Dragon and others are trying to circumnavigate the Environment Court rulings to get resource consent to move into Station Road. That would create havoc for the roads and community. Our taniwha won't be happy seeing the monsters Red Dragon mate moving in. talk to people in Te Puna. The majority understand you can't stop progress, but in such a cultural and environmental sensitive area, it's just not the right place for this type of activity. Rangiuru Business Park is already set up for these types of activities. The intent in Judge Smith's Environment Court rulings must be adhered to. In the Environment Court hearing for Resource Consent 13924L, all the business owners and representatives waffled on about the Daniels site being more affordable, blah, 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 but not one squeak about not contributing to the infrastructure the ratepayers are forking out for them to use, or how easy they can get away with Judge Smith's Environment Court rulings and how soft the Western Bay of Plenty District Council and Bay of Plenty Regional Council are. The Te Puna Business Park recently applied for a resource consent application RC 13924L to carry on operating in his ad hoc ways for 2 years. Our group specifically targeted opposing this application to test our skills. We only had a short time to lodge our submissions. I asked a couple of Hapu members if they would like to fill a form out. After explaining what it was about, they asked for a couple of forms and went away. When word got out amongst Hapu members, I was flooded by phone calls and visited by Hapu members wanting to fill out a submission opposing Mr. Daniels' application and wanting to support our group. I only had 9 days before submissions closed, but our group managed to deliver 60 submissions from Kaumātua Kuia down to the young ones to the council developer before close-off time. 12 returned theirs too late, and I was told some were done online. I received inquiries from Matakana Island, Ngāti Pukenga and Ngāti Hoa from over the Kaimais, but unfortunately after submissions closed, just about every one of them told me it was the first time they had the opportunity to fill out a form to oppose Mr. Daniels' resource consent, and our group say a big thank you for that. They know how important in their hearts what Pukawhaneke Pa and surrounding areas meant to their tupuna and themselves. Due to more emphasis on cultural awareness, understanding and education, a lot of the younger ones I spoke to while doing their submissions past comment how they have a better understanding of how their tupuna koros and nans have suffered in silence over what has happened in the past, and things are still happening like this development down Station Road. I have declared my hapu involvement in regards to the Kawairunga. One of the rules of the Pitarako Tribal Authority Constitution, Rule 5, Bullet Point 1, Kaumātua Kuia. Kaumātua Kuia are the guardians of the tikanga, kawa, mana, toanga and reo of the hapu. Rule 5 of the Kawairunga must be notified of any issues that impacts upon Pitarako and the writing of such issue. I'm not going to touch much on this as it involves hapu issues. It came to my attention in the Environmental Court here in relation to Resource 13924L that Mr. Barry Daniels had hapu support in regards to his application, which I was told had a confidentiality clause attached to it. I raised this issue at a Kawairunga hui. I received a phone call last Saturday, the 7th of the 10th, 23, from the hapu member who assisted Mr. Daniels supporting his application. My understanding of that phone call was that person has withdrawn that support by adopting a neutral position. That person revealed there were other issues to work through with Mr. Daniels that are separate issues that do not concern the phone conversation that took place between myself and that person. And I would like to thank that person for the manner in which that person conducted herself over that issue. Pirirako Tribal Authority, Kawairunga, is all about protecting and restoring the mana of the hapu, not money. It has come to my attention that Mr. Daniels is doing things on his site in accordance with the Treaty of Waitangi principles. I strongly refute that when I see him showing total disrespect to the all in good faith clause. Maybe a good case to test with the Treaty Tribunal. Another is a name change of the business part. Judge Smith's ruling refers to it as just that. The question must be answered: does a name change go back to the High Court, then referred back to the Environment Court? The third item, negotiating on erecting a pou. In tikanga terms, briefly, it must be discussed at taumata level. And I may add, it is entirely a male domain. Personally, I experienced much pleasure going around the rohi, assisting hapu members and the wider community, sitting with kaumātua kuia in their home environment, or on the marae, having a cup of tea, kōrero, kanohi to kanohi, laughs, and as one kuia said, to their effect, boy, when I was growing up, us Māori were called dumb, but we always spoke two languages, Pākehā and Te Reo. These Pākehā who are making decisions, allowing people to tramp on our mana like down there, meaning Station Road and Pukewhaneke, only speak Pākehā. Who's the dumb one? Comment from a kaumātua. All these years we've had to just suck it up. Also heard and felt how this development is affecting the mental health and well-being of whānau and the wider community members. Some interesting kōrero emerged talking about Pukewhaneke, Pā and the surrounding areas. I would see the mamai in their eyes, heard it in the quivering of their voice, felt it in what seemed like an everlasting length of silence. I felt very privileged and trusted when they revealed the hidden kōrero behind that silence. Development is opening up some of those secrets all over Aotearoa. It is now a proven accepted fact in the archaeology community that Māori have used swamps, coastal areas and wetland areas for centuries to hide their toonga, tupuna, and they know the reasons why areas are wahitapu. Pukewhaneke, Pā and surrounding areas fit that bill perfectly. And she passed that and she proved that in 1965. Also orally passed down for centuries, Tahata Roa, and I'll just pause at this moment because Julie, when she spoke, she referred to Te Tawa. She should have referred to Tahata Roa when she showed that first. She had it wrong. Okay? So Tahata Roa, being the ancestral burial ground of Paramount Chief Tutaringa, hidden from prying eyes, but not from the reason he wanted to lay there, to always hear the gentle murmur of the moana. When the old people say something of an area is wahitapu, you listen. After 18 years, all peoples of the Rohi and wider communities have had the opportunity to voice their opinion. Over this time, they have seen the negative effects it has on the community. They see and feel the unfairness, the trampling on the mana of the culture, environment and well-being of the people. They feel the council has the power and responsibility to own the problem, take it back and consider a complete reset. Times have changed over these 18 years. Let common sense prevail. To all those who have supported Pirirako Te Puna in opposing this resource consent to create a better community moving forward, members of both councils, Mr. and Mrs. Beth Daniels, who, and other organisation, and to both commissioners who have sat patiently listening to our concerns. Ngā mihi nui.
Thank you. That, I see we have questions, James.
Tēnā koe matua, tēnā koe e te rangatira takitimu waka a Tairanga Moana, nei te me ki au koutou, te iwi a Perirako. Gosh, quite a lot there. And I'm hoping that you don't mind sharing some of that, the paperwork that you're reading from, just so that, because there was quite a lot of context you put forward, if that's okay with you. We'll give it a couple later on. I guess one of my questions I had, Matua, was just around understanding your learning about that there was this Perirako Assessment Cultural Effects report prepared, and it was made confidential. By any chance, have you read that report? Have you seen it, the information or the contents within it?
No,
No. Okay. Because I guess that's
I was assured it was confidential, but I did make inquiries, and I spoke with the person concerned, and yeah, it did come out with what was in that.
because I guess we
But
might.
that was a private kororo, you know, in Hui, my place.
Okay, and I guess I'm not trying to create any further conversations around that part. I guess there was contents outlining cultural values, cultural context, and I guess my pātai, if you had read it, was just to understand, is there any parts within that report that are te here or a mistake, I guess, in your view? Now, I guess you shared about te tawa, is not te tawa, it's tahataharoa, I think you said.
They're two separate,
The two separate?
yeah. Tahataroa is, Te Tawa is a sand pit,
Okay.
or sand spit, and Tahataroa is was the big area shown on the diagram, the first one.
Because I guess my questions was just going to be around in terms of the content, yeah, within they call it the PACE report or the Perirako Assessment Cultural Effects, if there were any other potential, not mistakes, but I guess difference, I guess is what I'm asking for. But if you haven't read it, that's key.
No, I haven't read
yeah.
it, no.
So I guess that's where my questions were going to go. Other than that, I don't have any other further questions here, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bidwa.
Got it.
So we're particularly interested in any concerns that submitters have about what they perceive as adverse effects occurring from the existing 4 industrial activities on the site, be they site-specific effects or effects on the wider environment, such as the roading network. You spoke about, in the past, you were concerned about the spreading of dust from the house renovation activity, and you thought there might be some asbestos in some of those buildings, and you talked about traffic concerns with respect to Te Puna School. Are there any other effects you want to highlight for us arising specifically from the 4 activities on the site that are currently there?
For the traffic management you're talking about, or?
No, I'm asking you if, over and above what I've just relayed back to you, so you talked about dust from the site and you talked about traffic concerns regarding safety, I guess, of the Puna School pupils. Are there any other effects arising from the 4 industrial activities currently on the site that you want to bring to our attention?
I've listed the main ones in my this report here.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. Then no further questions, but we look forward to getting a copy of your written statement if that's
And
okay.
do you want the photos? The for and against photos to...
Sorry, what was that?
I've got an update on the photos showing the condition of the Harkola drain.
Yep, no, that'd be good if we can get those as well.
I've got sort of that was only taken just a few days ago compared with taken 2 or 3 months ago. You can notice a difference in water quality, and yeah, it's all there. And I've got photos of the tomos appearing. So
Yeah, Yeah, well, if you have hard copies of the photos, if you could leave them with our hearing administrator, and if you've got any photos on your computer you want us to see, you can just email those through to our hearings administrator and she'll forward them on to us. All right, so now we'll adjourn for afternoon tea and we'll resume
Kia ora,
at
people.
3:15. Thank you. Well, good afternoon again. We'll resume the hearing, and at this stage we're hearing from submitter Drew Cowley, who's appearing to us over video link. So, Mr. Cowley, I think I see you up on screen. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Mr. Cowley? So, Mr. Cowley, can you hear us? We can't hear you, so can you turn your microphone on, please?
Sorry, is that better? There's been a few
Yeah,
switches.
that's good. All right, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for appearing this afternoon over video link, and we're happy to hear from you any issues or concerns you have regarding the existing 4 industrial activities on the site. Thank you.
Okay, hello. As stated, my name is Drew Cowley, and I'm a resident of Te Puna who is directly impacted by this unconsented development. Yes, I am a family member of some other people who have put in proposals, but I believe that my opinion matters just as much as everybody else's, and I should have a voice. Firstly, I would like to state that I fully support the Western Bay of Plenty Council's Heather Perring and her recommendation to decline the resource consent. I do feel that some points that Ms. Perring has stated as minor impacts are in fact not minor. In that respect, point 63, that the operators do not have to meet the ODP water supply requirement, are not minors, as others must meet this standard for any business, and therefore to me that is unacceptable. The area is surrounded by rural residential, orchards and lifestyle blocks. It should not be acceptable to have suboptimal fire systems in place, as it would be unacceptable to have these in any other commercial operation. The risk of a fire, let alone tire fires, and there being insufficient firefighting capability contaminating surrounding orchards, homes and the environment is not less than minor. On wastewater points 164 through 167, that portaloos are acceptable. This is not acceptable to us. This area has been considered a high wind area, and should these portaloos be blown over, effluent entering adjacent waters is not acceptable. Given Ms. Perring has already noted runoff quality questions, this further adds to potential pollution to our sacred waterways. Point 207, which states, overall, I am satisfied that the effects from noise are likely to be no more than minor. As a person who is directly up the valley from this, I disagree. Originally, the noise levels were set at rural levels, as requested by the developers during the 2004-5 court ruling and rezoning. These have increased with the district plan of 2012, but we are often disturbed by loud, continuous machine noises from this area. This is not less than minor to those who live nearby due to the lack of funds and planting and mitigation to this noise. I'd also like to state that I endorse Priority Te Puna's demonstration that traffic effects are more than minor, and in fact often dangerous for the communities and those who work or use these areas to connect to the cycleway, Tauranga Okomokaroa, like myself, and walking area at the end of Te Puna Station Road. As indicated, I've been instructed that I shouldn't simply read my submission. However, I will summarize some of the points which are really personal to me and really, I guess, are important to me. Firstly, the applicant has often said that they are not aware of all the requirements, prerequisites. This simply cannot be true. The applicant, along with the other 2 landowners who make up this area known as the Te Puna Rural Business Park, specifically asked for the zone change, and when it was declined, appealed to the Environment Court. During this appeal, when it was likely the appeal may be turned down, the applicants as a whole, including this applicant, went away to revise the proposal and include several other further conditions. Ultimately, these changes swayed the court to allow the plan change, and these and other conditions, very specific prerequisites, very specific mitigation requirements to ensure as little impact as possible on the environment and community and amenity. How can he say he did not know about these? The 2012 district plan update, which changed some of these conditions and in many instances lessened them to the dismay of the community, still had several very specific prerequisites, very specific mitigation requirements to ensure as little impact as possible on the environment, community, and amenity. With the number of consultants the applicant has, surely he must know about these. My question is, how can the applicant not be aware? It was theirs and the other owners of the properties that make up the Te Puna Rural Business Park that requested these to get their plan change. These requirements are the applicant's own doing. They're not the community's, they're theirs. If anything, the district plan update of 2012 made it easier on them. Higher noise levels, no longer having to be 20 metres away from all waterways and ponds, including those in the structure plan. These are the applicant's own doing. Secondly, point 191 on page 38 of Shay Crossan's reply to Heather Pearing's summary. He states, in somewhat a unique way of looking at precedents, in my view, the circumstances giving rise to the need for this application actually sets clear precedents of what the applicant should not do, rather than something that is encouraged in the context of ensuring that any prerequisites planning requirements are met before you commence activity on site. The 39 applicant is not in a privileged position through the making of this application, having spent time and significant financial resources through the Environment Court and hearing process. Rather than being some sort of advert for the way forward, the President is a warning seeking consent in advance or complying with relevant structural plan conditions. I just don't get that. Yes, we are all obliged to abide by the rules and conditions that are set forth to ensure the safety of the environment, the people that live in that environment, and the amenity of our communities. Financial gain that has now been occurring from the unconsented illegal activity since 2016. Where has all this money gone? Believed to be more than 200,000 per annum presently. You wouldn't build a new housing development without meeting the prerequisites and consents approved, like sewerage, power. How could you sell those if you hadn't met the prerequisites? And yes, to Mr. Crossan's last statement, this is a warning to all of you that you are legally obliged to seek consent in advance or are required to comply with relevant structural plan conditions prior to doing any work. Is that not the rule of law? So things are done properly so as not to harm the environment, community, the amenity, like everyone else normally does. So why is this exception being considered at this time? The applicant has had over 18 years to comply. So now to really summarize my submission, things like the bunding, the perimeter planting, the stormwater ponds, the overland flow path that shall be established prior to any development of the industrial commercial development within the zone has not occurred. And the impact of these not having happened is felt by us further up the valley. In the original zone change agreed to by the applicant, where a yard is adjacent to Te Puna Station Road, that yard shall be 20 metres from the boundary of the site or from any waterway or pond, and 10 metres from any rural zone property. This is not happening, and operations are happening inside the setback with hard fill. The applicant's own maps show they are operating inside these limits. Impact fees have not been paid. When I had to get a resource consent to build an extra house on my property, I had to pay effectively an impact fee to build my property, and it had to be paid before the resource consent was issued. Why is there an exception being made here? As identified in the original zone and court ruling, that though these are 3 properties, they are to be treated as one, the Te Puna Rural Business Park, and thus require an integrated structural plan as outlined in Annex A of the court ruling and also in the district plan. There has been over time unconsented fill of unknown origins that has been put on the site, including in the overland flow path, which the applicant is also seeking retrospective consent for, as well as a waiver for some of the structural plan requirements. This has currently been logged and is being processed by the Western Bay District Council. These both go to intent to show the applicant has no intentions of living up to the promises given to the courts, the community, and those of us that live here that he will do anything different now. All of these above items were agreed by the applicant to get the plan change through, so why question them now at this such later date? Previous illegal activity carried out by the applicant and his tenants, that being concrete crushing, has potentially contaminated the soil, such that the council has noted a potential hail or hazardous activities and industries warning for an area of the site. The applicant potentially contaminated this area and is effectively wanting just to cover this up when they should be made to make good the land and the soil. Proper investigations need to be carried out on this area and other damage contamination caused by any of the non-compliant unconsented activities, and if found, make good prior to any relief or consent given. Simply saying they have no plans to disturb this area cannot be accepted, as the applicant has a history of non-compliance. Heavy truck movements, moving buildings in this area can create dust clouds, thus triggering a hazardous cloud. The courts allowed this plan change with the restrictions and mitigation requirements that had to be met as per Appendix 2C2, objectives of ensuring development within the Te Puna Industrial Business Zone is compatible with the amenity values of the neighbouring rural environment. How are truck tyres, amenity value to the rural neighbouring environment? How are old school buildings? How are pools? They are not. Which was to be incorporated in Section 7 of the Industrial of the District Plan. This has not occurred. With climate change and extreme weather events being more frequent, the applicant has 18 years to implement proper stormwater management, yet properties within the Te Puna Business Park flood, as well as those up the valley. Yet none of these recent events that have caused this flooding have been said to be of the scale of 100 ARI critical duration event, which the business park as a whole is required to manage and fully mitigate. The wetlands have not been created and vested in council. Though the council says there has been no subdivision, this cannot happen. Subdivision was not a criteria for these to have to be developed, or for that matter, vested in council. Again, this has happened prior to the is supposed to have happened prior to the commencement of any industrial business activity within the zone by all three applicants. Overall, this applicant is showing nothing but contempt for the environment, community, council, and the amenity of the area with repeated non-compliance and unconsented activity, never trying to be remotely aligned to the court ruling or the district plan when he is called on it. He initiated this. He may say that the businesses will be impacted who are operating there if they're asked to stop. Like us, when we bought our property, we did our due diligence of what that area was to be. Any good business or tenant should do their own due diligence prior to investing or setting up a business, just like everyone else in the community who invests in the area, who lives or works here. Saying it is too hard, costly to do is not an excuse, as all the information is readily available from council. The illegal activity has degraded the area, the environment, the community, and the community was here prior to this development, and the environment was too, and needs to be protected. Instead, the costs have fallen on the community who have had their land damaged and face daily traffic concerns. Meanwhile, the applicant is earning, at the moment, more than $200,000 per annum from these unconsented illegal activities. The illegal activities have taken their toll personally on me, as I never know what will happen next, what further damage will occur to my property, what additional costs I will incur to try and fix, mitigate the damage that has been caused and is happening. I have spent the last 5 years constantly concerned and worrying about this. It has impacted my quality and enjoyment of life significantly. Due to the extra cost, we do not do the things we enjoy most anymore, like visiting our children at their schools and universities. We are stuck spending money on mitigating things we were promised would be taken care of through the proper development of this area. Our investment in our property and the environment has been eroded for pure financial gain by this developer. damage that can never fully be repaired and will only get worse, especially if it is allowed to continue unchecked. Our adult children, since going off to further their education, absolutely hate coming home. Is this all they hear us talking about and the impact it is having on their lives and thus their enjoyment of their family home? Literally, they cannot wait to leave to return to their studies. This is what I am living with and we are living with. It is impacting us as a family as well as physical property damage. It's the last thing I think about before I go to bed at night, and often the first thing I see in the morning as I look out my kitchen window. Why 18 years later, this applicant is now saying he needs this non-complying activity approved to pay for what is required and what has been required for the last 18 years just blows my mind. They have effectively been operating illegally in one form or another for six or more years. Where has that income gone? They even stated that remediation is needed to neighbouring properties due to the damage caused, but no mention of compensation or how this remediation will occur. If given another 2 years, what guarantees do we, the community, or the environment have that the promised mitigation requirements will be put in place unless there is a strong message from this group? There are none. There will just be continuous delays and further after the fact resource consents, as history has shown us. Another 2 years of uncertainty on top of the already 6+ years, I think will destroy me, my family, and our property. The applicant seems to be using the system in a vexatious manner to wear down opposition, to impose cost and time on the community from which it has already spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours. The Environment Court recognised this and imposed these conditions for a reason, not only as they were to protect the environment, the community, and amenity, but because the developers themselves recognised they had to do this to get the plan change through in the first place. These are not new conditions or conditions to be too strenuous. They are the conditions they asked for and agreed to. In fact, they are now somewhat diluted by the 2012 zoning rationalisation. The damage done needs to be undone if it can be, and controls and mitigations put in place prior to any decision made with respect to any commercial or business activity. Given all of the above, the application must be declined. If not, what message are we sending to anyone else in the area? Do what you want, and if caught, ask for forgiveness and retrospective consent. This can only lead to further damage to our environment, our communities, our property, our roads, and our overall quality of life, and the severe costs to the council and ratepayers. It will also lead to further ad hoc development for pure financial gain, not for community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cowley. That's a very comprehensive and helpful presentation. Can you provide a copy of your speaking notes to our hearing administrator?
I could, yes.
That'd be good, thank you. I'll just see if we have questions for you. Mr. Cowley, you talked briefly about traffic safety concerns. Do you want to elaborate on those for us?
Yes, my wife and I like to cycle. It was one of the reasons we picked the area that we lived in. We also were aware of the development of the new cycleway, which can take us all the way into Tauranga. We choose not to cycle along State Highway 2 because State Highway 2, as we're all aware, is at capacity. So often if we decided that we want to bike into town, we'll have to head down to Puna Station Road. It is a terrible road, even with, if you come riding down there, there's a car coming from behind you and a car coming from in front of you. There's only just enough room for you and those two cars and the cyclist. The moment you put a truck on there, I will stop, pull over and stand right on the edge of the ditch. On several occasions while riding along either Te Puna Road or Te Puna Station Road, yes, you feel cars that go past that feel like they're only about a foot away because there's a big truck coming the other way. That corner at Te Puna and Te Puna Station Road, even for a cyclist, is dangerous because cars sweep around that corner. You can't, they changed that intersection by painting the lines further over because it helped give more visibility. If they were to be moved again, I think it would just create more issues. Even trying to turn into my own driveway off Te Puna Station Road, People are in a hurry. If a truck's coming the other way and I'm trying to turn into my property and people have to drive off the road to go around me because they're not impatient, I've just about been hit in the last 3 days alone, just about been hit 4 times, turning into my own driveway. So those are my concerns about the traffic. The other thing, which I have sent photos into the council hotline, is that footpath that is outside that goes from State Highway 2 and up to, I think it's called Armstrong Road. That footpath is at the same level with no barrier to the road. When walking along that, you'll often come across cars and trucks actually parked on the footpath, and you have to walk onto the road. It's just not safe. The road is not built for that traffic. It's terrifying.
Thank you for that. You also mentioned loud continuous machine noise. Has that arisen from the Daniels site, or is it arising from other sites on the northern side of Te Puna Station Road?
It originates from both sites. We hear them from both. We often hear quite a lot of clanging that comes from the other site, but we hear a lot of loud engine noises coming from Mr. Daniels' property. And as of a recent, and I don't know what's going on, we sit here going, what's happening now? Because this weekend, I think it was Saturday and Sunday, there were loud engine noises coming from that area. You just can't sit out on the deck and enjoy the country anymore.
Yeah, and is that noise, is that during the day or in the evening? What time, is there a typical time of day? Or?
The typical time, I mean, during daylight hours mostly. It can vary because we've had noises, not necessarily from that site, but coming from one of the other sites as early as 7 o'clock in the morning. The other day, Sunday, I got up because my wife goes to work and I shot out at 7:30 as well, and the noise was coming at that stage, but I know it wasn't coming from Overton site because it was fenced and closed. You can see that from our property.
All right, thank you. Just check any further questions. No, that's the end of our questions, but thanks very much for your presentation and for answering our questions.
Thank you for your time.
Now, our next submitter, hopefully online, is Marty Stevenson. Mr. Stevenson, can you hear us? We can't hear you. Can you just turn your microphone on?
Sorry, yes, that was me. You can
Excellent.
hear me now and I can begin?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you. So good afternoon and welcome. We look forward to hearing your presentation to us with a particular focus on any concern you have about effects arising from the 4 activities occurring on the site.
Yes, kia ora. Thank you for hearing me this afternoon. I speak on behalf of my wife, Kendall Stevenson, and 2 young boys, Hugo and James. I apologise, I may not be as fully informed on all the consent evidence that the previous speakers have been. However, I will try to describe the effects that affect me and my family. We moved in next to the business park in the end of 2017. We bought the property and we're under the impression that the neighbouring business park had strict controls over what operations could be conducted. The problems that we've encountered, the flooding of our low-lying paddock, ever increasingly. It is useless to me. We have the neighbour graze the cattle on it because we don't get grass growth enough to be able to do anything ourselves. Noise, I'll describe the noise as unnatural. The odd clanging, vehicle movements, and I've got a 3-year-old son, so you can imagine what it's like when I get the question all the time, what's that? What's that noise, Dad? So we hear that a lot. Dust, I've seen dust clouds. I worry for deposits on our kiwi fruit. Heavy road traffic. We have a blind crest between the entry to our property on Te Puna Road and the Te Puna Station Road intersection. So pulling out of our driveway in either direction, we often have traffic pull right up behind us, and the road is a racecourse and getting ever busier. I hope one day my kids can walk to Te Puna School and back without worry, but even now worrying them about them crossing the road. And finally, the grotesque outlook from our property. While we cannot see the site from our house, we walk our property almost daily and have to look out over derelict buildings, gravel pits and stacks of tyres. That's about all I have. Thank you.
No, it's very clear. Let's see if we have questions, James.
Kia ora, Mr. Stevenson. Thank you for that. I guess one question was, I just want to confirm I know the address of your property is correct, just in my mind, so I know where I'm locating myself. Is it 112 Te Puna Road?
Correct.
Cool. That's all I need. Thank you very much, sir.
And no further questions from me. I think the points you've made were brief, but they were very clearly made. So thank you very much for that.
No, thank you guys, and good luck with it all.
Thanks. So the next submitter on our schedule online, hopefully, Deacon Kuka. Not there. And okay, so the other next submitter, Piri Leaf, was going to submit in person. Not here. I can't hear what you're saying, sorry.
Tawhai Schuster, who was going to talk at 2:20. She's just heading home from work and she's going to Zoom in as soon as she gets there.
Yeah, do you know what time that would be?
No, I don't.
Do you want to see if we'd be happy to hear from her tomorrow if she's still driving home and if she's had a family emergency to deal with? It might be more convenient for her to appear tomorrow. Do you want to, if she's driving, you can't really message her, can you?
I could give it a call. She might have.
Yeah, do you want to try that? We're happy to wait to hear from her. She can sort of appear within the next sort of 15, 20 minutes. Otherwise, tomorrow might be more convenient.
Tawhai will be 5 minutes. Tawhai Schuster.
So we'll just adjourn for 5 minutes and reconvene and hear from Tawhai Schuster.
Kia ora, sorry, I can't hear anything.
Right, good afternoon. We can now hear you, but we can't
Awesome.
see you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. Do you have a camera or just audio link?
Sorry, I can't hear anything. Sorry, I couldn't organise my phone to put the video on.
That's all right. We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, that's fine. So we can proceed. Thank you for coming in this afternoon. And so now we're looking forward to hearing from you about your submission on the applications before us.
Okay, thank you. Kia ora koutou, I'm Tawhai Schuster. I put an a submission in relation to the development at Te Puna Station Road. Basically, the body of my submissions for the application relies pretty much on what I've submitted. And my concerns was probably mainly the traffic situation and infrastructure of Te Puna Station Road, and the inability for it to sustain an industrial zoning site, given that Te Puna Station Road at the southern end has now been closed. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Do you want to just expand a bit on your concerns about the traffic situation?
Okay, just since Te Puna Station Road has been closed at the end during flooding, that's the end near the Wairoa River. Clark Road is a very narrow carriageway in relation to an alternate route for heavy laden vehicles. Te Puna Road that feeds Te Puna Station Road is also a road that's the infrastructure of it and turning into there, I don't believe is adequate for heavy laden vehicles. And I only base this on, I don't know whether you have been provided evidence previously in relation to the heavy laden vehicles that have already used it and there's already been issues caused. By this, I mean issues caused as in the turning into Te Puna Station Road with heavy laden vehicles. And the fact that there's no turning bay into Te Puna Station Road. There's also no turning bays into the industrial zone on Te Puna Station Road, which concerns me with the reality of the fact that it's a public safety issue when it comes to heavy laden vehicles or vehicles in industrial zones not having a safe entry or exit point into the industrial zone. So I've basically submitted a couple of points on an attachment that I received. I'm not sure if you've had that submitted to you.
Yeah, why don't you just highlight the key points from it for us?
So the key points is the intersection of Te Puna Station Road and Te Puna Road, which basically is the turning area and the main entrance into Te Puna Station, into the industrial point and industrial area. Point B, where there's erosion that's probably about 100 metres from point A, which is Te Puna Station Road and Te Puna Road, where there's already erosion that has occurred and they've had to repair it from the bank slipping down towards the JMC area. And point C, which is basically the station road where there's been a number of vehicle collisions that have occurred because of the blind corner that turns into Te Puna Station Road to the straight. The other issue is with the roading is that there's a significantly low lying, and with the weather that we're having, I've found that the drains have been full. The drains are only about 2 to 3 metres from the sealed edge of the road. And I suppose from a resident's point of view, there's concerns that without proper infrastructure, it's just going to cause further issues and further costs to the ratepayers in repairing this.
Okay, have you personally experienced any traffic safety issues at the intersection of Te Puna Road and Te Puna Station Road?
Yes, I have.
Do you want to just describe those for us?
The recent one was basically a heavy laden vehicle travelling north on Te Puna Road, turning into Te Puna Station Road with a Moxie in the back of it. It's failed to take the bend, and due to the weight of the Moxie at the rear of the truck, it has collided with the power pole. It hasn't caused the power lines to obviously knock the power pole over or anything, or cause any issues with the power lines. But my concern is that it was a close call. It required, I suppose, the ingenuity of that firm to pull the Moxie off, to pull that truck out. And that's one of the main concerns that I have, is the heavy laden vehicles turning into there with what I've recently experienced. I'm sure that this probably would have already been submitted to you. I'm not sure if you've already had that.
No, that's good. Thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we see if we have any questions, other questions for you?
The other issue was the vehicles obviously leaving Te Puna Station Road onto Te Puna Road, because it's quite a steep hill. I've also witnessed sustained loss of traction from heavy vehicles struggling to make it up that hill that are carrying quite significant loads.
Okay. All right, shall we see if we have any other questions for you,
Sure.
James? No? My colleague, who you can't see,
Yeah.
doesn't have any further questions for you, but thanks very much for coming in and presenting to us and answering our questions.
Can I just submit further on a cultural point of view and the environment point of view? I've got concerns with the Harcourt stream.
Yep, go ahead.
So further to my submissions that are already submitted, I've got concerns with the developer who's failed the requirements for the last 18 years. Now, as my husband's also signed my application as well, he's mana whenua from Te Puna. These concerns in relation to the protection of the Harcourt stream, and also significant Māori areas that have been identified by Western Bay Council that borderline the development area. I don't know if you want me to go further into that. So it's Puke Whanake is one of them, the Harcourt stream, and historic places have also identified some archaeological sites that also border very close to it. I've submitted that as attachment 4 in my submissions. I think my husband just wanted to just make it clear that as Manawa Whenua, these concerns that the industrial area will be affecting the Harcourt stream, the significance and the cultural value to Manawa Whenua in relation to this area. So I think that's what he wanted me to put through, is that the protection of the Harcourt stream and the close proximity of this industrial site, we believe will affect, I suppose, maintaining the stream as a valuable stream for cultural reasons. And obviously with the increase of rainfall and the undetermined weather, we feel that the flooding will have an effect on that industrial area, which would subsequently cause pollution to the Harcourt stream running into it.
Okay, James, any follow-up on that?
Kia ora, Ms. Shrestha. That's James Fitu here. Thank you for that. I've noted your submission points on cultural matters, and there have been previous submitters who have spoken on those also. So thank you for reinforcing them.
Thank you.
All right, so that appears to be the end of our questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
The only other submitter on our schedule this afternoon is Piri Leaf, who was allocated a time of 4:40. Do we know if that person's coming? Yep. All right, so what we'll do is we'll adjourn for the day, and if submitter Piri Leaf does wish to appear, then we can hear from them tomorrow. So thank you very much, everyone, and we're now adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.